Welcome to the Beating Heartland, created by Denver Baughman.
Episode 24, The Tourist Trap.
Hi there. It's been a minute. Hasn't it? I guess recording's the best thing I can do right now. Don't really know what else to do. What did I last record? I don't even know. Everything's just jumbled together. I need to talk, to say. You know that already. Here. That. Yeah. Was that really only 2 days? I ate him. Or absorbed. Consumed. Whatever you want to call it. He walked out in the middle of the road. Looked dazed, half awake. A stupid grin on his face. He was staring right at me when I hit him. I didn't even have time to react. The car crunched and his body collapsed. And I got out and the blood was pooling under him, staining his shirt. I tried to help, to stop the bleeding, ease the pain, anything. But his body writhed, pulsating like something was trying to get out. And a black and white distortion. An odd, glowing haze lifted off of his skin and seemed to disappear into my hands, becoming one with my skin, until the line between my hands and his skin was obscured, and the ooze followed. It started from his nose, then pooled out of his eyes, slithering in black tendrils joining the haze. It almost looked like the word's body when they had melted. The glowing black and white aberration mingled with the ooze and sucked into my hands. I could feel it in my arms. An energy pulsing to life, and a drain sucking out a little more of me. It snaked toward my heart and into my head, and I was lost. Lost in a sea of him. His name was Andrew. He was a hunter. These two aspects encapsulated his identity. This, of course, is a generalization. People are endlessly unique, but still, for Andrew, it's almost true to say that hunter was his identity. Only followed a few degrees by sleepwalker. He had a family, 2 boys, a girl, and a wife. And this was their order of importance in his mind. He justified his constant hunting with the idea that it was feeding them. Though honestly, he didn't care if the meat was used. Not if he got to keep the heads. He liked trophies. It took some time before he became aware of the sleepwalking. He'd woken up several times in the middle of the woods, far away from his home or any of his blinds, before he realized something was wrong. He was really good at justifying his actions, like many of us. Even the ones he didn't remember. He did remember the dreams, filled with deer, ducks, animals he didn't know the names of. Trophy winners. They would impress anyone, especially his brother. One night, the dream was more real than ever. The moon was full and shone brightly through the trees. The evening had come sooner than he'd wanted. But then, he heard a rustling in the brush, and appearing before him was the largest set of antlers he'd ever seen. 30 points. Almost unheard of. The buck rushed into the woods, and Andrew followed behind, refusing to lose this prize. He panted and his shirt was drenched by the time he saw the buck again. It stood in front of an abandoned mansion. The building loomed at the edge of the woods. Before Andrew could line up a shot, with a snort, the buck ran into the house. Andrew followed. The building's ceiling was about to collapse. Bits of roof hung down and dust covered everything. The floor creaked as Andrew walked. It would be difficult to sneak around. And then he heard a crunch. He followed the noise, and as he entered a bedroom, he saw a large bobcat. The cat growled, and Andrew quickly shot the beast. It fell onto the bed. Blood splattered on the wall and soaked the sheets. He would collect that later. He continued through the house until he came to an open door. Inside was a large game room. Standing at the end of the room was the buck. Its back was to Andrew. Behind the buck, which almost seemed to be hiding them, were 2 coyotes. Not a regular animal for Andrew, but their pelts were too nice to resist. The buck and coyotes were trapped, so he raised his gun. The deer turned to look at him and snorted and bleated. It was higher pitched than Andrew was used to, almost like a scream. He pulled the trigger, and then he woke up. He wasn't in an abandoned mansion at all. He was home. To die would be a blessing. That was what the whispers said as he sat in the house. The days passed, and he wondered if the police would ever come and take him away. He never cleaned the house, never did anything with the bodies. He couldn't. It all still felt like a dream. The whispers in the house spoke louder to him. Louder than they had for years. They'd been part of why he'd left the house so often. He couldn't stand them. But now, they were starting to make sense. Once more, in a dream, he walked the road and saw the beautiful light heading his way, promising freedom from the pain. And it all went black. Stories. I was back on the road, staring at the empty sky. A turkey vulture curiously circled above to see if I was dead. I'd seen all of that, felt all of it so clearly. As I finished drinking up Andrew, the vision began. And I was looking through his eyes, feeling his thoughts, understanding the context. Lost in his mind as it merged and disappeared inside of me. A car pulled up. Lights shone on my face, and someone stepped out. I glanced toward Andrew's corpse, but it was gone. Only a little bit of goo left, quickly dissolving. The person stood behind the car doors, and I couldn't make out their features past the light. Taking a nap? I could hear his smile. Just kidding. You doing all right? It looks like you hit a deer. He pointed toward the car, and the front was worse than I'd expected. I don't think you should be driving that. We can call you a tow truck. Don't worry about it. Thanks. I couldn't think clearly. I felt sluggish, and the vision of Andrew's life was still fresh. The light of the car heightened the pain in my head. But I felt weirdly calm, tired, like I could sleep for days. You sure you're doing all right? He said. He stepped away from the car and knelt close. His browless eyes stared at me with concern. They were tired, baggy. He had trouble sleeping. He wore a fishing bucket hat, a large lure dangling off the side, clinking against his ear. He scratched his patchy beard while he inspected me. Yeah, you probably have a concussion. I have stuff back at my place. You're coming with me. I'll call the tow truck and make sure a buddy of mine fixes your car. Name's Jacques, by the way. Denver. It's a pleasure to meet you. Up you get. I hadn't said yes, but I didn't put up a fight. Jacques helped me to my feet and walked with me. Before I was in the car, I stuttered, my phone. Jacques smiled. He rushed away towards the smoking truck and returned with the phone. Here you go. Don't worry, I live close by. You might have seen the billboards. Mississippi River Oddities. Yeah, somewhere. It did sound familiar. Jacques rambled about his tourist trap as he drove. He was pleasant. Overly pleasant. It felt like the niceness of someone selling you something. I guess that's to be expected from someone who ran a tourist trap. My mind wandered as he spoke, and I thought about Andrew. What was that? It wasn't the same as the words entering me. The energy was different. Something had changed inside, but I didn't know what. Andrew's thoughts swimming around didn't help. Jacques' rambling became distant, and I realized I was drifting off to sleep. Hello? It's nothing. I woke to a scream. I jerked and found myself in the bedroom. The taxidermized animals and fish hung on the walls. A large catfish hung above my head. Its beady eyes gawked at me. I tried to get out of the bed, but my legs gave out, and I toppled to the ground. I rolled onto my back, and the animals multiplied, dancing around the room in a nauseous waltz. Somnum stood above me, smirking. He still looked like Sam, and the smirk, helped the resemblance. Want to help me up? I said. As always, he just stared. You're not helpful, Smirk. All right, I can do it. I felt like a toddler. My legs shook as I grabbed the side of the bed and forced myself to my feet. Did it. Proud of me? Smirk. Take that as a yes. I remembered the scream. I hobbled to the door and peered out. Outside was a long hallway with wood panel flooring and pictures of riverboats and fish. This guy likes to stay on theme, I said to no one. A pale early morning light radiated from a window at the far end of the hallway. At the other end, I heard a door creak. Jacques emerged from the door, posture hunched and exhausted. He mumbled. I couldn't quite make it out, but his hands gesticulated wildly. He seemed excited. The wood creaked under my feet, and Jacques looked up. Ah, you're awake. Good. His lip twitched, then widened to a grin. And hungry too, I bet. Come on, I'll fix you some breakfast. Thank you. I could barely get out a word as the hallway extended and swirled. My feet almost gave out again, but I braced against the door. I realized my earlier attempts talking to Somnum probably sounded like gibberish. Jacques tilted his head. You got the beauty of all concussions. Food will get you feeling better, if you don't puke it up. He indicated a door. I followed, slowly. We entered the kitchen, and he sat me at a small table. The smell of fish permeated everything. I held back another retch as the smell penetrated my nose. He fixed me a plate of fish, toast, and some other stuff. My brain refused, but my stomach won as its growls forced me to eat. Jacques looked out the window and gazed at the river. I wasn't sure if I should have mentioned it, but for whatever reason I said, I heard screaming. Oh? Yeah, woke me up. I'm sorry. Sometimes the guests get overenthusiastic when they see the more special exhibits. Those with weak stomachs usually can't handle it. You're already open? Of course. It's 10 o'clock. 10? I glanced at the window. Sure enough, The sun had risen to match. I glanced down, and my food was gone. I didn't remember eating it. I looked at Jacques and said, when did I wake up? You've been up for a few hours now. A few... My head churned, and I pressed my eyes closed. Take it easy. You've been through a lot. Gotta keep your strength up. I leaned back on the chair. Where were you headed before the crash? Answers. I was looking for answers. Aren't we all? How's the truck? My buddy's looking at it, but said it'll probably take a bit to fix. Ugh, I can't stop. I have to keep moving. Can't answers wait? They have been. Not anymore. Well, you won't be any shape today. Just enjoy the exhibits. I'm good. I'm sure it's lovely, but... I opened my eyes and was standing in a long, dim room, filled with glass displays. Yes? Jacques said. I didn't remember moving. I looked around. A few people milled about, stopping to admire the numerous displays. Do you like this one? He asked. He pointed at a small glass exhibit with taxidermy of a strange fish. The more I looked, the more wrong it became. Its eyes were green and large, almost as big as the head. It looked mutated. Scales large and misshapen, some sticking out at odd angles, and something beneath the scales poking out. Sharp black spines. I'm fond of that one. It was my first. It's nice. You make these? Make them? Goodness, no. I find them. I do the taxidermy myself, though. Yes. Find... Sorry, wasn't I just eating breakfast? Oh, I'm glad the food left an impression. But that was almost 2 hours ago. 2 hours? Hey, come look at this one. Jacques guided me past several displays, each more mutated and horrifying than the last. He told rehearsed stories about each one. I zoned out as he droned on, my focus shifting to the guests. They seemed just as tired, their faces limp and expressionless, viewing the pieces. A few sat on benches, yawning, and one was even curled up on the floor near the vending machine. Tourists are like moths, drawn to the light of trivialities to add to their bank of experiences. A way to feel like they're unique, experiencing things most haven't. Or maybe it's just a way to spend a day, That's one thing you can't take away from me. That part of my brain's still here. Yeah, well, regardless, these tourists were bored. Exhausted. I turned back to Jacques, but he had crossed to the end of the corridor. He stood in front of an empty glass exhibit. I walked to him, my feet dragged. Why is everyone so... What do you think of this one? He pointed to the empty display. It's empty. Yes, it is. He stared, silent for a long moment. And then he said, all this time, and it's still empty. The work is never finished, not for any of us. Constant battle with our mortality to wrap everything up in a neat little bow before being shipped off to whatever comes next. Looking for the perfect exhibit. Something new. Something wonderful. Finish up each part. Make it whole. I'm sure you'll figure out something. He turned to me, a glint in his eyes. Almost a hunger. The display will be filled very soon now, I can tell. That's the good news. Run, my brain said to me. My legs couldn't, and I couldn't quite realize why. Yes, it is good news. I get to rest soon. I never get to rest. Even foggy, my brain thought of the creatures in the display. If Jacques was telling the truth, and he'd had actually found these things, then there might have been a book nearby, changing the animals, mutating them, the landscape. But I couldn't feel it. I was too sluggish to make out the power of the words pulling inside, guiding towards their essence. At that moment, though, I felt a pounding inside, a vision, a feeling. The cabin, my father's research. It was close. Somewhere along the river, I could feel it. But something was wrong. A danger was drawing close. There was fear in the words, an urge to hurry. I wasn't the only one looking for the cabin. Something else was on the hunt. I turned to leave and said, I'm sorry, I should get going. I need to... Jacques put a firm hand on my shoulder. You need to rest. Look at yourself. Gotta get you back to the best version of you. I need to go. I blinked and I was back in the bedroom. Alone. Well, except for Somnoom, sitting in the corner. I looked at the clock and it was 6 p.m. What is... I tried to stand. This time was even more difficult. I collapsed to the ground with a thud and my head knocked against the wooden floor. Suddenly, I saw something. Like I had been whisked away. There was a cabin in the distance, faintly lit through trees by the setting sun. It felt like I was there. The vision clear and tangible. It was a small one-floor cabin, just large enough to fit one person comfortably. I tried to look around, but my vision was locked on the cabin. I had no body, no head, no eyes. The trees around seemed distorted and wrong. The branches twisting in unnatural ways. The bark covered in bumps and abnormalities. The roots seemed to snake through the ground, shifting the soil as they looked for something. There were books here. I could feel it. Many pieces of meat. The words. I don't know how many books have been written by them or their avatars, but the more I feel, the more I realize the sheer numbers. The words had split themselves countless times in attempts at preservation and control. When I hit my head, I had somehow linked myself more with them. The power hiding inside of me that I couldn't access earlier. It was clear now. Like bringing your subconscious to focus, allowing the inner workings of your mind to become known, giving yourself up to the pain and exhaustion. The cabin was near. That was the only reason I could latch onto it, see through the words. There were some faraway, faint trails, including a large one. A large collection of books somewhere. But suddenly there was a light inside the cabin that shifted my focus. The light moved. Someone was inside. Fear spiked and the roots began to shudder and quake. Several tried to slither up the cabin without success. Fingers trying to grab at the intruder. The shadow moved farther in, and I needed to stop it. But I was back in the bedroom, my face against the cold wood, head aching. The connection to the words lessened as my head cleared. I was myself again. I needed to get to the cabin. Someone was there, someone that shouldn't be. I was about to leap up and run out of the house. It was close. I could make it in time. But then I heard something under the floor. It was a muffled voice. Someone was singing a slow, reverent song. It almost sounded like a hymn or a lullaby. It was joined by other voices. Slow, mournful, joyful, weary, elated tones. It was discordant, but also felt complete, purposeful. Something was enticing about the voices. Thoughts of leaving the house, running to the cabin, vanished, and the desire to find the voices took over. The house was a maze. Hallways didn't make sense. Several rooms were empty, and some passages and doors didn't seem to lead anywhere. I realized that a book must have been there at some point, changing the location. Probably the same book that created the strange creatures Jock had caught. But at the time, I was focused on finding the source of the song. The building felt alive, the song seeping from it. Finally, I came across a set of stairs that led farther down than the basement should be. I don't remember taking the stairs. I don't remember opening the door at the bottom, but I was there. While walking the halls, the same exhaustion had taken over as I listened to the voices. I realize now that I hadn't had a concussion. It was the house, or the thing in the house. I was at the bottom of the stairs. The door was open, and there was a group of people sitting and facing the right wall. Before I could make anything else out, I blacked out, finding myself sitting among them. I recognized the faces around me. They'd been the tourists walking the exhibit hall. Directly beside me was the teenage boy I'd seen lying on the ground near the corner, napping. His face glazed, and a line of slobber was making its way down his chin. I looked around. Everyone was singing the melody I'd heard. They all looked dazed, half asleep. It was around that moment I realized I was also singing. Words that I can't remember and never learned. Jacques sat ahead of us, rocking back and forth on his knees, in a prayer position, singing louder than the rest. He was crying, but not from sadness. And ahead of him... Imagine you had an oil painting of a room that was still wet. Now, imagine you took your hand and smeared the painting in one direction. This was that. The very space and matter of the room seemed to shift, sucking towards a singular point. The end point could have been a few feet or miles away. It was impossible to tell. But at the end... At the end, there was a womb. Veiny and translucent. Intestine-like tendrils, reaching out in various directions. Something waiting to be born. And it had been waiting a long time. The intestines seemed to fix the womb in the air, keeping it from collapsing to the ground. The thing inside wriggled and squirmed. A form of a hand scratched from inside. It wanted out. And it was close. The singing stopped. Jacques stood, his eyes red. But he wore a wide smile. He said, loud enough to carry, "Thank you all for joining me for dinner." There was no reply, only tired breaths and scattered snores. Jacques didn't seem to notice or care. He just smiled. Without a word, people started to stand and walk out of the room. Jacques waved to a few who didn't notice and continued to file out, slothfully. Then, Jacques' eyes turned to me. His smile faded for a moment, replaced with fear, or maybe it was anger. It was quickly replaced with a contented smile. "Good. You also joined us. It's only right, after what you'll do for us." I found the strength to stand. For whatever reason, probably the words, I seemed to have more control over myself than the other guests. "What is this?" I said. "It's feeding time. It takes many to feed her. Her appetite is always growing. And now that she's found the perfect form, well, I had to make sure she had a good dinner." He just smiled like a proud parent. "It's been so long. We were giving up hope." But then she felt a presence like never before. She told me to go out and get it. Bring it in, like all the others. He turned to smile at me. His eyes scanned my body, and the hunger was back. "You're a gift." She never imagined that something like you would be the basis for her form, her power. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. He continued. I was scared you wouldn't come willingly. It's something with your power would, I don't know, put up a fight. But you came. You didn't even question it. How could you not know? How could you not feel? Yeah, you look more human than we would have expected, but that will make it easier. Easier for her to feed without suspicion. The perfect last piece to complete her, to make her perfect. I wanted to run, but my legs couldn't despite the power. And she's felt your kind before, and once, but that was long ago, when she was still too weak to snatch them up, to feed, to grow. But now, now she can finally be born. The thing inside the womb pounded against the membrane, which distorted and stretched almost to the point of breaking. A weight pressed on me, and I fell to my knees. The floor stretched, and my body shivered. I blinked, and I was inches away from the womb. There was a glow from inside, seeping through the membrane with a diffused red glow. And then, I could see my face inside, staring back at me, the eyes wide and youthful, filled with a ravenous glee. It was distorted through the membrane and red glow. My face, but stretched, misshapen. Scales on the neck, teeth out of place, eyes pale green. A hand with fingers too long. It was a mix of all of the creatures in the exhibits. I heard Jock behind me. You're gonna fit so well in the display. The creature inside reached out a hand, placing it firmly against the skin. And I did the same, my hand trembling. The skin of the womb was cold and slimy. I could feel life pulsing through it. And then we connected. Jacques began to sing, loud and crazed. My mind melded with the thing in the womb. Everything went dark, and then split into two. I could see myself, the distorted me, staring out of the womb, and I could see myself looking in with horror and fascination. I could feel her emotions, the hunger, the jubilation at finally being born. We became one, but split. The process began. But then I felt a power surge inside of me, and the black inkiness of the words shifted under my skin, and I said, no. I don't know if I said it out loud, or if it was in my head, but the thing inside flowed through me and into the womb. There was a screech inside of my head, filling the room. I heard Jacques yell, no! Stop, you're killing her! Black. When I woke, I was lying in a pool of clear liquid. The only noise in the room, gentle sobs. Hands trembling, I pushed myself out of the fluid. The intestine-like tubes dangled from the ceiling. The womb was gone. She was gone. I'd killed her. The words had killed her. Maybe the power was too much for her. She'd been too greedy. It had unraveled her. Jacques was on the floor, sobbing. He held a piece of the intestine close to his chest. He didn't look up at me. I don't think he even knew I was there. The room was normal now, except for the hanging innards. My mind was clear. I could feel the words again, pulling inside and pushing me in the next direction. It was almost comforting, familiar. I started to leave, but curious, I glanced back at Jacques. I wanted to know his story, understand what that thing was. I wanted to know. I thought of Andrew, sucking in his story. I mean, Jacques deserved that, didn't he? I left him. I mean, everything in me wanted to hear it, to see it. I don't think I'll ever know the details, the history behind it. The words didn't like that. Or maybe I don't. But I left the house. The feeling of the words pulled me deeper into the forest, along the river. The cabin was close, and someone was inside. I ran, not looking back at Mississippi River oddities. I ran faster and longer than I think I ever had. And then I could feel my dad's cabin begin to burn.
The Beating Heartland was written by Denver Baughman. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on whatever streaming platform you are using. Follow us online at The Beating Heartland. Thank you for listening.